So in this tutorial, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the After Effects interface as we move forward for our 3D assignment. Please make sure that you have checked your email and the announcements on Canvas. There have been some changes in the assignment, and I just want to make sure you are up to date with the modifications, not only to the project guidelines, but also the deadline has been changed. So make sure you check that out. Now, hopefully, After Effects won't look completely unfamiliar to you, even if you've never used the program before, because at this point in your scholastic career, you should have experienced many different softwares through Adobe. And hopefully at this point, you can start putting connections on how things are related in terms of workspaces, hotkeys, and things like that. So I'm going to select New Project. And this is the After Effects workspace. On the left here, you can see our project panel that's highlighted here. And that's where we will have all of our assets for the project, images, video, logos, music, right? And we will end up keeping that organized and use folders to make sure that we know what we're storing and having that in the most organized way here. We have this center space here. It is known as the composition space. It's essentially your workspace, right? Where you will see what you're working on here. We have this side here, which has information, and these different panels here are for effects. A character panel, right, for the text. Different libraries if you're starting to store, I don't know, different fonts or maybe Adobe stock video, right? Different effects, audio effects, and what have you. Tracking, which is a really awesome feature. And then, of course, we have the bottom here, which is our timeline. And again, hopefully this is mildly familiar to you as you've probably already used Premiere and such. So After Effects is kind of like the Photoshop of video. It's not simply, trimming and adding effects and stuff like you might have reviewed in Premiere. It's also masking, animation, right? Things like that. So there are a couple ways that we can start our composition. You can, of course, select either of these points here. You can also see if you look, you can see that this symbol here also matches this icon down here where we can create a new composition. And generally speaking, when you're starting a new composition, you're going to want to set the settings to whatever the delivery specs are, right? So if you have a client or a class assignment, you would want to start your composition according to how you might be outputting your file. And if no one cares what the specs are, this is my suggestion here. HDTV 1080 at 24 frames a second. A width and a height of 1080 by 920 with square pixels, right? Frame rate of 24, 29 is fine. I have my resolution set to half right now. Unlike Premiere, which renders in full time, After Effects does not do that. I will show you what I'm talking about, but if it happens. But sometimes when you are playing back, you might get a lot more glitches here. And an easy way to resolve that is just by reducing your resolution of your playback. You can see here that the duration of the clip I selected, or the duration of our file, will be 30 seconds. You can, of course, modify that. It's starting at 0. And the background color will be black. It can be any color your heart desires. I like black because black is very significant of like this empty area here that we are going to fill. And you can push OK. And now we have this black empty footage area that we can start filling. And I'm going to open my different assets I have here, and I'm going to just drag and drop them over here. Now we have all of our footage here. And I will take this file, and I'm just going to drag and drop it onto our workspace here in our composition. You can see here that the video file is much larger than the actual space we have available here. So I am simply scaling it while holding shift, right? Again, something that you should be familiar with at this point to keep scale. And that's fine by me. You can also see here that the clip is about 25 seconds, but our basic composition here is actually lasting for 30 seconds. So I'm just going to go to composition and trim comp to work area. Oh, let me bring this down. Composition, trim comp to work area. And now at least the timeline is exactly the same amount of time as our footage here. And I can just push the space bar and play back this video that I have here. Another way to make a composition is by creating the specs of the composition directly from a file. Simply by dragging and dropping this into your timeline. And now, as opposed to before when I had to scale a video, this video is, this composition is already built to be the size of the video that we are using here. So no scaling has to be done. All right. So this composition is now titled, the title of the video. You can always rename it. It's pretty important that you try to keep things organized. All right. So we have our video here. You can see here that we have essentially almost like layers in Photoshop starting to build up here. And the timeline kind of works similar to the layer panel in Photoshop. Also drag, maybe a logo into the video as well. It's honestly a pretty ugly logo, but we'll work with it. And I'm just going to scale this down to make it a little smaller. And now you can see that there are layers in this panel here starting to stack. And just like in Photoshop, whatever is on top will be seen. If I were to drag this underneath it, the logo will become invisible as it's hidden beneath the video layer. And now we have our logo and our video in the timeline panel. And remember, you can always keep transforming the logo with that bounding box. All right, so unlike Photoshop and other software, we have this duration, right, with our timeline. And again, you can push space to watch your video as well. So let me just show you a couple of things here. Maybe a simple animation to the logo would be a nice introduction here. So let's start with moving this. So you can see here in our layers that we have these drop-down menus here. So I'm going to drop down and open a menu for the PNG. And you can see that transform is right there. So I can drop that open as well. And you can see here the different transformation properties that we have available to add to our logo. So the properties here are exactly as seen, and we're going to change these over time to create an animation. So let's start by, making sure that we are in the very beginning of our timeline, and we are. And I will drag this logo from where I maybe want it to start, maybe down here. Excuse me. So I've moved this and dragged it in the composition window. If I, just by moving it, of course, it hasn't actually moved the video, moved the logo around. We have to make keyframes to do that, right? Which again, should be something you're familiar with Premiere. So I'm going to the bottom of my timeline and I'm going to set a keyframe by clicking this stopwatch point here. And you can see here the little diamond that indicates that I have produced a keyframe in the video, and now I will drag it to where maybe I want the video to last. And honestly, this is a pretty long video, so I'll just do this really quick, maybe just up to here, 7 seconds. I will now move my logo to where I'd want it to be placed. You can see it's showing where that motion will be and a new keyframe. And now if I drag to the front and play it, it is slowly moving my logo up. I actually want to make this clip way shorter. So I'm going to bring this down maybe to 25 seconds and just try to shorten this video a touch. You can snap videos by holding shift to make sure that things line up. You can see how I held shift and it just boop over. All right. And again, I'm going to trim comp to work area just to try to help this out a little bit. And I want to move this over a touch. It's a little slow. Let's see now how this is going. And I still think it could be even slower. So I am a little faster. I'm just going to move this over a little bit more. And honestly, maybe I'll just have that portion of the video or the this not start in the very beginning. So let's see how this looks now. Okay, so now we have a basic animation, right, with this moving up. It's a little less than 2 seconds, which is fine. And we have our 2 keyframes here. So keyframes, of course, are something we should already be experienced with, right? They're like markers, and they're going to tell After Effects that at this point in the timeline, the position of this layer will be right here, right? And at this point, it will be here. After Effects will just automatically figure out the values of how to make that a smooth transition. And it's a simple animation, but we definitely have this animated. If you want the movement faster, again, like I showed you, you can always drag that keyframe in to shorten the amount of time it takes for the object to go the distance that we want it to go. And of course, you can make it go slower by going backwards. Okay. So I would say that the logo kind of comes and stops in an abrupt way. It doesn't look very natural, right? Naturally, objects accelerate and decelerate when they start and stop moving. And this is actually a really easy thing to do. So I'm going to select my keyframes. Okay, I'm clicking and dragging. And I can press F9 on the keyboard, which is the shortcut for easy ease. You can also find that by going to Animation dropdown, Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. And now you can see that there has been an application to those keyframes because now there is an hourglass shape to them instead of the diamonds. So now I'll play it back and there will be a mild acceleration and deceleration. Right? Really nice. We can also fade in that logo too, right? So let's start the playhead at the start here. And I am going to drag this opacity down to 0. All right. And then I am going to move the keyframe to this, and I will drag it up to 100. My mistake. Let's do that again. I am going to select the time here, the stopwatch, put my opacity at 0. I will now go to this second marker, my second keyframe here. I'm going to hold shift just to make sure it's lining up. And I will now add my opacity to be at 100 by dragging this. All right, we can see our keyframes here, and now we will have a nice fade in effect. Okay. You can see here how it's starting to really add layers in here, which can be a little overwhelming, especially if there are certain parts like scale or rotation that you may not be working with. And if you press U on your keyboard, it'll hide any of those transformation features you're not actually working with that don't have any properties, that don't have a keyframe, right? So you can simply push U to view and hide those. All right. The transform properties, there are keyboard shortcuts when a layer is selected. So S will bring up your scale properties. R will bring up your rotation. P will bring up its position. And T brings up its opacity. And you can see as I'm selecting these keys that those menus are popping open. Here, you can see in this top bar that we have some tools available to us, such as the selection tool, right, to move things around. We have the hand tool. Of course, we have a shape tool. And if you drop and hold this open, you can see that you can get a star, an ellipse, a rectangle. You can also see it has a fill and stroke choice automatically shown to you. We got our pen tool, a couple brush erasers, things like that. And what I would like to use next, which is the text tool. So I'm just going to click on my composition, and you can see it has an arrowhead here for the text, and I will just write down my text, and with my layer selected, I am going to just move it a little bit. Oh, and let's make sure things are spelled right. All right, so After Effects is so much fun. Okay, let's just say that I want this to start maybe just a little bit after this animation that we made. Okay. Oh, that's not my work area. Make sure that I have the correct thing in here. All right, great. I just want to make sure all my stuff here lines up. Again, I'm dragging this and holding shift. Okay. Great. All right. And I want this to start a little after our logo moves. Okay, great. Okay. So of course you can add any of the effects like we did to our logo, right? Let's see. So let's look at these panels over here. Right, we have our character panel, which I just showed you. Of course, you can always change your typeface to whatever your heart desires, as well as the size and what have you, the color. We have our effects and presets. And honestly, the list is so long. As you open every single one of these drop downs, you can see that there are just endless choices of how you can edit your videos or elements in your video. Highly suggest going through them and trying to see what's here so far available. Of course, since there are so many options, the search bar here is really helpful. And for this, I'll just look up hue and saturation. That's what I want. And I will just drag this onto my video, my footage. And you can see here that now there is an effect control panel that's opened where the original project panel was. It's still there, right? It's kind of like having tabs open in Photoshop where you have to go through them at the top. So we have our control effects, our effect controls up here so that we can modify our hue and saturation here. So of course you can change the master hue to anything that you want. Of course, you can also change the saturation if you wanted to, or totally desaturate if you want, as well as making maybe the brightness or the darkness might be affected. If you wanted to, you know, make it black and white, you could do that in here. So a nice way to try to change your effects in your picture. If you're in your video, if you want to try to have some fun with some effects. This is a pretty basic one, right? Hue and saturation is a really great one. You can see there's a colorize option here as well. Pretty fancy. So that's essentially how you can add effects to your video here. As you can see here, this is my resolution for my playback, and hopefully the playback isn't glitchy. Just a touch. Let's start from the beginning. Great. All right. Let's see here. Let's render our composition. So we'll select the composition that we want done here. This composition labeled as such. We'll go to composition, add to render queue. And now the render queue panel will be opened. You can see here that I've already opened it once before, and we have our queued file here. Whoops. So we can, of course, change our render settings. For me, best settings sounds pretty good. And the output module, though, we may want to change high quality because it just might make a gigantic video. Let's look at lossless and just click on it, and you can see here the output module settings. So let's change the format to QuickTime. Format options. We will change it to, let's pick, generally speaking, the Apple ProRes 22HQ, 422HQ is pretty good quality here. We'll push OK. So that'll give us a high quality render, but the file won't be unbelievably big, right? Like a lossless, uncompressed video file would be. And click OK. All right. I am going to select our output 2. Make sure it is saving in the right area. I want it to be in my After Effects tutorial folder. All right, so now I have my video saved where I want it to be. Push OK. Now I will select the render button, and it will start rendering my video in this output panel here. It may take a moment, and when it's done, it makes a really nice little sound to show you you're finished. I'll show you. All right, great. And now we should have our video, which is right here. I didn't name it properly. I will definitely show you how to do that next time, but here we have our video. After Effects is so fun. All right, so that's where I'm going to end for now. If you have any questions, please email me. And keep an eye on the assignment as I start changing it this week to be an assignment you can actually produce.